Okay, it started.
Hi, all. This is Hillary, Group 2. So this week we're talking about developing a leader in crisis management and how to do that as a leader. So I wanted to start off just by kind of going through how you can develop either yourself or develop others as a leader. And starting on in the textbook on page 375, there's a kind of an outline by the Center for Creative Leadership that goes through the three different areas where you can, as a leader, you can, you know, build and develop those skills because as we all know, it's a constant learning and you always need to, move forward. So the first area is leading oneself. So here under, how to build, you're talking about self-awareness. So really, I think that that's a big one because I think people don't always realize, the actions that they have and how they actually influence other people. Ability to balance conflicting demands. So when I think about this, it's, you've got the needs of maybe multiple bosses or the needs of people that work with you, people that work for you, people that you're working for, as well as family life. And I think that sometimes balancing all of that can be difficult. The ability to learn. So I think that we always need to make sure that we're open-minded and that just because you've reached a certain level doesn't mean that you can't learn more. And then leadership values. So this was, I think, kind of tied back to one of the previous chapters that we read about as far as ethics go, but just really having those values and continuing to learn values as you proceed. So that's everything with leading oneself. And then leading others. So the ability to build and maintain relationships. So obviously, people that you meet every day, subordinates, people above you, and just being able to not only build them but then keep those relationships going. And you're going to always make new relationships, but you still want to make sure that you value the previous relationships too. um, and then the ability to build an effective work group. I think that this is always huge. I think if you are a good team leader and you can build a good group, you're always going to learn from the people that work for you as well and the people that are following you. So I think that that's a really good one too. Communication skills. I think that this is what we're here in this class for. Like we're working on, whether it's through this sort of media or, in person or, through emails, just the way that we talk to people is always something that can be improved. And then the ability to develop others. So you're not just developing yourself as a leader, but developing the people that are around you and following you. And then big one is leading the organization. So management skills, and I know that we went through previously, a leader isn't necessarily always a manager, and a manager isn't always necessarily a leader. So really working on the task side of it, and being a transformational leader rather than maybe the transactional leader. I think we heard about that earlier. Um, and then the ability to think and act strategically. So I think that this starts to where it ties in with if you're in the crisis leadership area where sometimes you're not going to know exactly what the right answer is, and a good leader is going to continue to learn and be able to act quickly and on their feet. And the next one actually is to think creatively. So you're not always going to know like this is absolutely the best thing to do. And I think that a good leader has different ideas, different ways to do that. So, and lastly, the ability to initiate and implement change. So that's always a hard one, especially if you're in like a large corporation. Bringing about change can be quite difficult. So I think that those are all good areas. Can you guys think of any other areas that leaders can continue to grow in or learn in?
I think you stated it. Excuse me. I think you stated it perfectly, Hillary. Leaders and managers, they should always be kind of looking for areas to grow and improve. Otherwise, they're not going to be great leaders, especially in crisis situations. You have to be prepared for all the unexpected things that can happen.
Yeah, absolutely. So that's kind of everything that I had on developing a leader.
Okay, so I'll go next and I'll be talking about crisis. Anyway, when you're a leader, not everything is going to be running smoothly, so problems are bound to pop up. The book says that the first step to effective crisis leadership is know your enemy. We can't prepare for or manage crisis until we have a better understanding of what they are and how they can unfold, and also have an idea of how we can fix or have a solution to the problem itself. So the book also gives a list of top 10 types of crisis, which are public perception, and basically what this is, it's negative stories about the organization, the products, the personnel, or the services that are being offered. There's also natural disasters such as tornadoes, hurricanes, mudslides, wildfires, blizzards, earthquakes, and flooding. Product or service, product recalls, or for example, there's foodborne illnesses, concerns about the products and services that are generated by the media. Sometimes, if something happens, the media can make it seem a lot worse. And there's also terrorist attacks, bombings, hijackings, abduction, poisonings. There's economic, which is cash shortages, bankruptcies, hostile takeovers, accounting scandals. There's also human resources, and this has to do with workplace violence, labor unrest, discrimination, sexual harassment, school and workplace shootings, theft, fraud. And when it comes to industrial, there's, let's see, mine collapses, nuclear accidents, fires, explosions. And there's also oil and chemicals, which is oil spills, tanker and railroad spills, pipeline and well leaks. When it comes to transportation, there's train derailments, plane crashes, truck accidents, multi-vehicle pileups. And then the last one is outside environment, which is collapse of financial systems, rising fuel prices, deregulation, nationalization of private companies, mortgage crisis. And when it comes to these type of situations, I think that a leader has to be aware and prepared, because they may not always happen, but something will always happen. So they have to be, they have to expect the best, but they also have to be preparing themselves for the worst. And I think that when it comes to effective leaderships in these types of situations, the leader is going to be the one setting the example for all the subordinates. So that, they'll have the knowledge they can share with everybody else. That way, there's less accidents or fatalities. And I'm sure, that we see this all the time on the news. And I know that there's probably certain situations that we all have experienced in our jobs as well. I know a couple months ago, the high school where I'm working at, we got a call because there was a bomb threat. So the kids were going out to lunch, and immediately they just called us and told us that we needed to evacuate the school in an orderly fashion. Of course, the kids were freaked out, because when that happened, it was when the Ariana Grande shooting thing happened in London. So there was somewhat of a panic, but, we were already trained how to deal in these situations. So our principal, she was walking around making sure everybody was okay. So, she knew how to handle it. Have any of you dealt with anything similar?
Well, I think.
Go ahead.
Sorry. I think when issues like the Ariana Grande, or the actual bomb, not bomb threat, the actual bomb that happened at the concert, I think that influences others to what is it called, like copycat kind of the same incidents. So I believe a good leader in a crisis situation, such as all the examples you gave, which are great examples, should be aware of what's going on, especially like if you're in the high school, a school district, what's going on around with kids around that age that's recently a crisis. And let's develop a crisis reaction plan based off of an Ariana Grande, bomb that happened. It could likely happen with us. And unfortunately, the school shootings, every school should have in place a crisis reaction plan for that as well. So I think I haven't had a lot of experience, fortunately, with those kind of crisis situations, but I can speak that I believe it's best for a leader in the appropriate fields, if you will, industries, to have appropriate plans based on those things. So it's great to hear that your bomb threat was hopefully a hoax and nothing came about that.
So that'll be it for my part.
Okay, well, I'll go ahead and go into mine. So what I would like to talk about is establishing and maintaining credibility during a crisis situation. So I would like to talk about an incident that happened at within Arizona State University in January 2014. There was an ASU fraternity that had a party celebrating Martin Luther King Day. And during this party, it was terrible. The kids ended up becoming pretty racist. They dressed as if they were going to be black. They ate watermelon, had fried chicken, and it got a lot of social media attention. And they even did like hashtag Black for MLK. And these are all white kids. And it was a very terrible controversy type thing. And I'm not sure if you guys are familiar with our president, Michael Crow, but he is a zero tolerance party kind of guy. ASU used to be known for partying. They used to be one of the top partying schools of the nation. And after this issue came about in 2014, he was known to state, at ASU, students who violate these standards will be subject to disciplinary sanctions in order to promote their own personal development, to protect the university community, and to maintain order and stability on our campuses. Nearly immediately after, the fraternity was expelled from the university for their behavior. That's severe repercussions, but it's helped Michael Crow evolve ASU as not the partying university. We've definitely lost that reputation. He has zero tolerance for that, and it's respectful. It's as a parent who might bring my child to a university. I have a junior in high school, so I'm definitely getting to the part where I'm looking for universities, which will likely be ASU. But you're going to look at things like that. And just like the Sandusky case with the Penn State, I don't know if you guys had the opportunity to do your discussion post yet, but Penn State's reputation is terribly ruined for decades because of the Sandusky incident that has occurred. So I respect a leader that understands their reputation and holds that it must be maintained. And when situations come up like this, he's immediately handling them. He's not waiting like the Sandusky case that went on for so long. He's immediately handling them, zero tolerance. So it's really, really helped the university. Do you guys have any examples of what you think of when you think of credibility and or success or loss?
Well, I think we saw like with the BP spill that the text talks about, and Tony Hayward was the CEO of BP at the time, and he made some really insensitive comments during the aftermath of it. On page 425, it talks about that he said that he wanted his life back, which is fairly insensitive to the people that actually did pass away. And then he kind of downplayed it and said, it was just a drop in the ocean. So I think, in those crisis moments, how the leader reacts really shapes not only how, the leader's viewed, but also how that company is viewed. So I think that, BP and that spill, they definitely came out kind of, tarnished quite a bit. Whereas, had some different actions been taken by the leaders up, during that process, I think it could have ended up differently.
And that also reminds me of the football coach in the Sandusky case, how he was told about the 1988 case of Sandusky sexually assaulting a child. And he reported it to his supervisor, I guess. And that's up for debate. But instead of him making sure that it went to the authorities, he just focused on football because he thought that the games were more important. So the credibility, he had no idea. I mean, he should have, but it affects so many more than just your credibility in football or the BP. Terrible. It affected the environment, animals, and the ocean, and I'm sure there's cells. So good point. So that's about what I have to say about credibility and leadership.
Okay, so I'm going to be talking about crisis leadership a little bit. So the book calls out a 3-stage model of crisis development around page 414 to 416 in the textbook. This is just kind of, each crisis stage makes a unique impact on leaders, and how they handle them is key to whether they're successful in crisis management. So stage 1 is pre-crisis leadership. So what do you do to prepare, or what are you doing looking for things to happen? You need to be able to recognize danger signs. So be alert to anything that might be a red flag. And as Jose was explaining, be prepared for those natural disasters. Have a plan for that. You have to be prepared, even though if you don't know when it's going to happen, but it will happen at some point in time. So always looking for trouble is key as well. Excuse me. You also have to have a crisis management plan. So being prepared for those natural disasters, or like Jose had, bomb threats, making those plans ahead of time, practicing them, and being prepared for those events to happen can drastically change how the outcome is after a crisis happens. If you're prepared for a bomb threat like Jose had, it's going to go a lot more smoothly. Kids and teachers aren't going to be as anxious and stressed. If you don't plan for it, it's going to be chaotic and probably a disaster. So those crisis management plans are super important to great crisis leadership. So that kind of also goes hand in hand with Stacy, establishing credibility. If you have these crisis management plans and you're practicing them and you're prepared, it gives you a lot more credibility as well. It makes you a lot better of a leader in general, especially in crisis situations. Do you guys have any experience? Do you guys have like evacuation plans or anything like that set up at work, Hillary or Stacy?
Instantly, it makes me think of like fire drill going off. Or I grew up in the South, so we always had the storms. We had to practice with a book over our head for emergencies in case there was a tornado, but that's what I think of. Fortunately, again, like I said, I have not had a lot of crisis situations happen, but bomb threats, fire drills, and tornado drills was something that were common growing up.
Yeah, we definitely have things in place. I mean, I was actually just thinking, so I have multiple sites, and there was a shooting at one of them 2 weeks ago, and my manager, did it flawlessly. I mean, she completely followed the plan. And of course it's in Atlanta and I'm in Chicago. So it's not like I'm there to really help. And I got on the phone with her and, kind of went through the list of everything, and she was all over everything, which made it, obviously it was a crisis situation. It was a terrible situation, but I think that her leadership really, really helped it, not escalate and not turn into something that could have been a lot worse. So I think that there's certainly a lot of value in having all those plans in place. And you never know what's going to happen.
Yeah, we have plans in place at my job too. So we have, evacuation drill. We have our emergency kit at Starbucks, and we also have plans for crisis management plans for things as little as like irate customers or shoplifting. And we practice these pretty regularly. So if any of this stuff happens, we are able to handle it very easily and smoothly, and you own it because you already know what you should be doing and what to expect next. So I think that's really key with crisis leadership, is having that plan, knowing how to execute it, preparing, and just being ready. Yeah. That's about all I have to say for crisis leadership.
Yeah, and we went over just a little bit, but I think we're good, guys.
Thank you, everybody.
Awesome, thank you.